Hello, this is Father Bob Basic from St. Gerard in Lansing. I'm here with another installment of our new segment, Burning Questions of Faith, where you ask the clergy here at St. Gerard different questions about your faith. And the question I come to answer today is not a light one. It's a question, why does God allow bad things to happen in our world? This is a question I think that a lot of us struggle with, a lot of people struggle with, and unfortunately I think a lot of people get wrong. So let's look at the answer to that question, or some insights into that question today. Last year, I was coming back from the Mackinac Island from the Knights of Columbus Convention. I was taking the ferry across the Lake Michigan there, and it was a particularly rainy and cold day, and so all the people were huddled together in the boat, in the covered section of the boat. And I noticed a chair up towards the middle, a seat, and I went and I asked the gentleman, an older gentleman, if I could sit down there. And he turned around and he looked at me with a great smile. I think he was about to say, "Sure, please sit down." But the smile went away when he saw my collar, and he said, "Sure, you can sit there, but just don't talk to me about your God. Your God took my wife, and I have nothing to say to him." I knew in that moment that this man had been through a lot and had struggled with a lot of questions and probably had been told things that were less than helpful to him over his life and his dealing with his wife. I think sometimes all of us ask that question, why would God allow bad things to happen in our world? Some people try to comfort us in those times. They say something like, well, it must be part of God's plan, or God must have needed that person more than us. And I think that people offer those comments with kindness, but at the same time, they can leave us at least with a subconscious thought that God caused this tragedy or God caused this thing to happen. Now, the Christian faith teaches us something very different. God does not create evil. In fact, in the Catechism of the Catholic Church, it says, God in no way, directly or indirectly, is the cause of evil. God created the world to be free. God created us with freedom. And because that freedom is real, people sometimes choose violence, sometimes choose cruelty or selfishness or ignorance. And also in the fallen world, in our fallen human natures, the world is marked by suffering that comes from illness and loss and tragedy and the limits of human life. Sometimes that suffering can affect an entire community, like we've seen recently here at St. Gerard. An innocent life was lost. A husband and a wife fought for their lives and are still recovering, and a good Samaritan that ran across the street to intervene is still fighting for her life. Suffering appears in the quiet moments of our lives at times. The loss of a child, the death of a spouse, the loss of a job, the diagnosis that changes everything in our life. Faith never asks us to pretend that these things don't happen. And so the question really isn't, why does God cause this? The better question in these moments is, where is God in the midst of these things when they happen? Christian faith says that God is present wherever love rises up out of darkness. You see it in the neighbor who ran across the street. You see it in the first responders and the doctors that fight to save people's lives. You see it in friends and family members and even strangers that stand beside people when their lives fall apart. And that's why I've always liked the words, the wisdom of Fred Rogers when he said, "Look for the helpers." He challenged children in the times when scary things happen in the world, not to focus on that scary thing as much as we focus on the fact that there's helpers, that there's people trying to make a difference. St. Augustine once said, God would never allow evil if he could not bring good out of it. God never wills the darkness, but God always is working to bring light out of it. As Christians, we see this most clearly in the cross. Human cruelty put Jesus on that cross, and God transformed this suffering of Jesus into salvation. And so when tragedy strikes, and it does, our faith does not pretend that everything is okay, that everything makes sense. We grieve, we pray, we support one another, we look for answers, and we try to become the helpers. We try to become the people who God allows good things to come out of darkness in the world. And so, my brothers and sisters, we have a God that loves us so deeply, and He's with us no matter what circumstances that we face and always sees us through.